In this video, we're going to be looking at allowing your users to register and log in with their Google accounts within your apps, and we'll be doing that for web, Android and iOS. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do on our login page, we're going to add the sign in with Google button. So if we come over to our elements and we need to add a new row into our page there below the login button, and we'll give it some padding so it's not sitting there next to the button. So if we give it 25 padding maybe, do we have padding? We've got plenty of padding on the one below as well, so maybe give it that bit more actually. Oh, maybe not that much. There we go. And then we need to add a button, and then we want to select the row and center the button. And then if we select the button, then we want the button text to be log in with Google. And if we come further down, we've got the further properties here. So the fill, we actually will keep it the same color fill as our background. So I believe that to be primary background. We want the button elevation to be 0. We don't want the elevation on the button, we want it to be flat. And actually what we do need to do is change the text color to primary text. And then if we come back down to the border, we'll have our border to be primary text as well with a radius. That's all good. And then we want an icon. So on the icons, so I'll just do that again in case we miss that. So down at the bottom here, we've got icons, and we just want to type in Google. And then it should be in font awesome, and then pick the Google option. So there we've got our login with Google button. We can maybe change the, if we change the border up to maybe 16 or something, then we get a much more rounded, modern Google looking button there. So that's that one. Okay, so if we head over to our register page, and again we want a row beneath our standard button, and we'll give it 30 pixels padding, and we need a button in there. And then if we center the button again, click on the button, then we need to go and change the, so this time it's register with Google. And our text color needs to be primary text. Continue down. We want our primary background as our background. We want our elevation to be 0. On our border to be primary text. Our border radius, get it up to 16, so we've got nice rounded edges there. And then down to the icon again. Google, go to font awesome, and then we've got our register with Google button. So we are going to be adding some actions to these, so not just yet though. So if we open up the action flow editor, this will be a backend database, Supabase authentication, and this will be create account. And if you see at the moment, we only have email as the option there because we haven't yet enabled Google authentication within Flutterflow. So once we've done that, we'll have the Google option as well. So we need to go into Cloud Console first, create those bits, and then we'll come back here and set all this stuff up. But before we do, let's delete this action because we don't want to confuse ourselves later on down the road. So yeah, that being done, let's move on. Okay, so we are moving on to Google Cloud Console. So if you just type Google Cloud Console or just Cloud Console into your Google search bar, and you'll get the obviously get the SERPs. So to click on Cloud Platform Console. Now, if you already have a console account set up, you'll get the option to log in, assuming you're logged into your Google account, of course. So if you have, that's great. Just go and log in. If you haven't, click on the Start for Free button. And then the first thing you have to do is, if you're not signed into your Google account, it'll ask you to sign in. So just do that. And then there'll be an option where you have to add your country, what country you're from, and then when you're opting out of emails, etc. And then the third page will be where you add your personal details, and they do ask some payment information, although I've never been charged for anything with Google Cloud. If you're using authentication on a test app where you got only a few users, you're not going to get charged anyway. You're going to be well outside the charging limits, and there is in actual fact some free credits anyway, which you can spend in the first 90 days. So you're not going to get charged anything. So you're safe enough to sign up. But if you are worried about that sort of thing, you can obviously close the account down or stop the project when you've finished it to make sure that it's not being accidentally used. So that being said, get signed up and then log into your Cloud Console. As you can see, I already have an auth project set up, but we're going to go through the process to set up a new one. So at the top here, we want to add a new project. So you've got the drop down there because this area is all the sections within the project. So you should have the drop down box where you can add a new project, and then you have to give the project a name. So we will just call it AI login, and we haven't got an organization set up, so no organization, that's fine, you don't need to worry about that. And then just click create. So therefore we're getting a new project being set up. Okay, and then select project. So we're now working in our, you can see our AI login project. So that is our Google Cloud Console project that we're going to use for our authentication. Now on the left hand side, like I said, you've got all these options. Now we want APIs and services, and we do need to set up the OAuth consent screen, and we need to go through credentials. So if we go to OAuth consent screen first, and it'll ask us a few questions. So we want to use external users, and then click create. So basically internal is when people within your own organization, therefore you don't need to submit your app. External means you are using external users, i.e. a public app, which is obviously what we're building, and you may have to get your app verified by Google, but to get it testing you don't need to do that. So to finish what we're doing, to go through this process and finish the tutorial, you will not need to do this. However, you are going to publish your app and put it into production, Google may need to review it and approve it for use with Google Auth. So but if click on create, so then we need to give our app a name. So as usual, little red stars are things that are required, and the other things are not, obviously. So give your app a name, and so we've already used that. And then support email, we'll use our Gmail, our standard Gmail address, and none of this is required, so we won't bother any of this. If you are going to put it in production, obviously you are going to need to add this stuff, so you do need a privacy policy, otherwise you definitely won't get approved. You do need a terms of service, otherwise you're not going to get approved, and you will need a home page, otherwise you're not going to get approved. So they're all things to bear in mind for future use. So we do need to add a domain, an authorized domain. So that is something we get from Supabase. So we'll go and get that in a second. So we need developer contact information. Again, just use whatever email address you like. I'm going to use the same one. Okay, so we do need an authorized domain. So if we go to our Supabase project, that's where we need to go now. So in your Supabase project, you need to go to project settings, and if you go to API, and we need the project URL. Now the reason we use the project URL from Supabase and not the URL of our Flutterflow project, because that might be something you're wondering, saying, well, actually I'm logging into Flutterflow. No, you're not. You're logging into Supabase. The authentication is done by Supabase. not Flutterflow. The Flutterflow obviously is the front end, and the back end is done by Supabase, so that's what you're logging into. That's providing the authentication. That's why we're using this and not your Flutterflow URL when we create one. So you just need to copy your URL there and add your domain there. So paste that in there and then save and continue. Oh, okay. You don't need the HTTPS. I forgot about that a bit. There we go. Right. So we need to add and remove scopes. Now what scopes are? These are the elements we are going to be asking our user if we can use. We are not going to be using sensitive or restricted scopes. We're only going to be using non-sensitive. So if they're sensitive or restricted, you definitely need to get your app approved by Google. With non-sensitive, that isn't necessarily the case, and also we're only setting up for testing. So what we're going to do now is add or remove scopes. So add scopes, and then we'll get a whole list. So basically all really we want to do is see their email address. We don't really need their profile or the stuff they've made public available. We don't need it, but we'll click on it anyway, just in case we do ever want to use it. But really, it's just the email what we're using to log in. But we don't need any of these other scopes. And all you need to do then is update, and then they are non-sensitive scopes. So basically, we are asking our user, can we use your email address to log into our app? And then, can we see your info that you've made publicly available? Should we wish to use it? We're not going to within the scope of this tutorial, but we've added that as a scope just in case we want to. So then all you need to do then is save and continue. Okay, in here you add test users. So basically, as you can see there, you can add 100 test users. So our app will be in test mode until we decide to make it public. So there, you just need to add some user email addresses. I'm going to add myself. And also, if you've got any other email addresses that you have, if you've got a few on the go, some people have a business one, a personal one, a Gmail address, that kind of thing. You could even maybe set up another one. So you've got a few different email addresses there that you can use and add them to your app. So we can, for testing purposes. So just save and continue. And then this is our summary. Basically, everything we've filled in is just telling us what we already know, and then go back to dashboard. So that's our consent screen. And if we go to credentials, so basically that's the same route as that. So if we click on that, you can see the author's consent screen, the credentials, they're all there. It's basically the same route. So we need some OAuth to client IDs. So we need to create some credentials. So click on that. And we need an OAuth client ID. Now we're going to be setting up 3, but in the first instance we're going to set up one for web. So it's a web application, and we'll give it a name. We'll call it Artist Web, because we've remember we called our app AI Artist. Okay, to add our authorized redirect URL, we need to actually go into Supabase. Now we are going to set up Supabase in a while, but we do need to get the redirect URL for this. So if we go to our Supabase project and we want database, on the menu on the side we want to go into authentication and we want providers. So these are the list of the authentication providers, the identity providers we can use. As you can see, we've already got email enabled, which we did previously. And we want to scroll down till we find Google. and we want to copy the callback URL. So if just copy that, head back to your Cloud Console project, paste that in there, and then that's that section completed, and we can save. And you'll see we've got our client ID, and that's our one for our web client. So click OK. So we don't need that for now. Now, the next thing we need to do is create them for Android. Now, there is another step we have to do to Android, and this is where we need to download our Flutterflow project and get the code. So if we go create credentials and OAuth client ID, again, we do the same thing. Application type we now going Android. And basically, we're going to need some extra information. We'll call it AI Android. And we need, you can see there, we need a package name. I could learn to spell also, which would help. We need a package name, and we need a SHA certificate fingerprint. Now, how we get this is not really how we're doing it here. There is a much simpler way of doing it. So our package name and our fingerprint are required fields. So this is where we need to do a bit of extra work. So if we go back to Flutterflow, and if you go to settings and app details, you can see your package name is what you need there, and that's what you need for the Play Store. So basically, if you just copy that, that's your package name that you need, and that goes in there, and then that will be, when you download the code, that would be in your Android manifest XML file. If you open that up in an editor, now the SH1 fingerprint is something we need to run a command on in the console on our project to get that. So what happens is it is within your app when you download it. So what you have to do is basically extract it. Now then, on the developer menu in Flutterflow, so go back into Flutterflow, click on the developer menu, which is the one that looks like the code symbol. And as you can see, all these are upgrade to use. So you cannot download the code, you can't get the APK or any of those things. This is when you need to upgrade your Flutterflow instance, your Flutterflow application. So therefore, you need to go ahead and do that now. As I said, you can use a free trial, and then once you have upgraded, you will get the option, and you will need to click on download APK when you have done that. As I said at the very top of the video, I do actually have the paid version anyway, so I'm going to go over to that. So as you can see here, I've opened up the AI artist template within my other Flutterflow instance. Yours will not look like this, obviously, because this one is the sort of completed version of, we're just obviously covering the authentication in this tutorial. This is actually the finished app. But what you need to do on your developer menu is simply click on download APK, and it will download to your downloads folder or wherever your applications are set to automatically download to. But if you click on download APK, and then it will download. So as you can see, I've got mine in there. Okay, so the next thing we need to do, we need to make sure Java is installed on our machine. If you type Java download into your Google search bar, and then if you don't already have it, so just click on the top one it was likely to be, and that is download Java for Windows, and then simply download Java, and it will allow you to install it. Now I already have it installed. So when it's downloaded and installed, it will be set up. So you can just follow the instructions, installation instructions. It's basically download and install. It's pretty straightforward. So, but you don't need to do anything with it once it's downloaded and installed. You haven't got to go into it. You haven't got to learn Java and nothing like that. So, but you do need to to get the SHA1 code, you do need to have Java installed on your machine. Okay, so with that done, if you've got Java set up on your machine, okay, so you need to head to this page. This is authenticating your client in the Google Play services. I'll drop this link in the comments below, so all you've got to do is click on it and go from there. Need to scroll down, and this is how we authenticate the client to get the SHA1 key. And we need this command here, which is using the key tool on the APK file. So if you just copy that, and then in the folder that you've downloaded your APK file to, if you right click and open in terminal and paste the command in there, and what you need to do then is change the name of the name app.apk to the name of the file that we are using. So ours is called AIArtist.apk, yours may be called something different. So that's what we need to do in there, and then run the command. And if you've got Java installed and everything done correctly, you will end up with this screen. And all you need to do then is copy the SHA1 file. Now, because that is created when you create the APK and you download it, the SHA1 file is created then. So if you copy that, and then we can paste that in there, and it allows us to basically complete this process. So then if you go click on create, and then we've got our client ID for Android, and then finally if we click create credentials again, we've got OAuth client ID, application type is iOS, and then the bundle ID, which is basically slightly different, but essentially it's the package name. So you need the package name again. We don't need any of those things just yet because we're not publishing into the App Store. And then we just give that a name. We'll call it AI iOS, and then create that. Okay, so as you can see, we've got 3 different client IDs for our app: the iOS one, the Android one, and the web one. So now back in Flutterflow, and if we go to integrations, so if you have got the message there that's saying you've got any tables, just click on get schema. From, if you remember, we set up the Supabase section in the previous videos. So click on get schema, and then that will solve that problem. And then we want Supabase authentication, and then we want to enable Google authentication in Supabase. And as you can see, it's asking for our iOS client ID and our web client ID. Now those are the credentials we have created in our Google Cloud Console. So if we copy the iOS one and we paste it in there, and if we copy the web one and we paste it in there, you see the error there has gone away. So that's that side set up. So basically what we've done there, we've gone on Cloud Console, we've created everything we need, and we've then enabled within Flutterflow the Supabase authentication. So now we've got a couple more things to do. We need to go into Supabase itself and enable it on the Supabase side, so it's going to work, and then also then put the actions in Flutterflow to finish this off, and so we can test it out. Okay, so this is the, I guess, the final bit of setting up the structure to make the OAuth work with Google. So we're going back into our Supabase project, and we're going to set up the Supabase side of it to make it work. We need to take the information from our Google Cloud project and add it in here. So where we went to get the callback URL earlier on. So we want to head into authentication and providers. And you can see we've got our list again. So go down to Google, which is obviously where we got our callback ID from earlier. So if we enable sign in with Google, and then we want our client IDs basically, we want first off the one for web. So if we go to our cloud project, we're on our web client ID. So we copy that, and that gets pasted in the top box. We want our client secret for OAuth, which will come and go and get in a second. And then we want our client ID for Android. So again, head back, our client ID for Android. So we need to copy that. And paste that into the Android section, and skip nonce checks, keep that switched off because that's something that you need if you're going to be using it with iOS, which we are enabling. Even though we're not setting it up fully, we are enabling that. So now we need the client secret for our auth. So we go back into our web one, and we're on our client secret. Needless to say, you shouldn't expose your client secrets. Just so you know, as soon as this is complete, I'm going to sort of delete this and these projects. So obviously these are only temporary ones really, they're going to be removed. So but you shouldn't be exposing those, but that does indeed go into that box there. And then all we have to do then is click save. We have now enabled a sign in with Google on Supabase, and now we can then go back into Flutterflow, re-import the schema, and we can get this finished off. So if we head back over to Flutterflow, and then we will set up the actions on the two buttons that we added to our project earlier. Okay, so we want to set up our actions on our two Google buttons, that is the register and the login button. So if you remember earlier on with our Supabase authentication, we indeed did set up the enable Google authentication. So we've put our client IDs in there. So now we can set up signing in with Google on our buttons. So first off, we're on the register page. So simply we want to open the action flow editor, add an action, and we want backend database, and we want Supabase authentication, and we want to create account. And our auth provider is now Google, because obviously that's now available because we have set it up. And we'll turn off navigate automatically, and what we'll do, we'll add an action, navigate to login. So basically what will happen is our user, when they've created their account with Google, they'll get navigated to login. And then if we go to our login page, and again select our Google button, go to the action flow editor, add an action, backend database, Supabase authentication, this will be the login action, and that will be login with Google. Now we do want to keep navigate automatically on because basically we have set up to our authentication section to, once logged in, we get navigated to our home page. So that is all we have to do, because everything in terms of making this function within Flutterflow, much like the email login, is done behind the scenes. We don't have to provide any code for that. So that is us finished on this side. So that should all work. So in the next section, we'll actually just go ahead and test it and make sure it works. Okay, so we're now going to test the functionality of this. Now, if I go to my Supabase project, as you can see on the authentication, I've currently got no users. So I've deleted whatever we've got, so just to show that it's going to work. And I'm running Android Studio, and as you can see, I'm on a physical device. This is got a Motorola Android phone plugged into the computer. I've downloaded the APK. I like doing this because it's dead simple. You just download the APK and literally drag and drop it into Android Studio onto the screen, and it just loads it onto the device, which is great. And obviously don't forget to change the SHA code to make sure that you've got the right one in Google Cloud Console. every time you do that. So we now want to create an account. So I'm doing this, as I said, on a physical device. So if we click on the create account and we want to register with Google, and we'll get the authentication screen. Just check the account and you'll get the box, and you say yes, continue, which takes us to our login page. Now if we go to our Supabase account and we just refresh that, we've now got, as you can see, a new user just created, and in the table for the public users, the trigger function has populated that too, so that's good. So if we just log in, and there we go, we're logged into our blank homepage. That's it, everything's working, that's all good. So hopefully that's something you can use. There are statistics to say that people log in with Google much more so than email and password. It's much more trusted, so I definitely should recommend you adding this to your apps. And if you like that, please consider the like and subscribe, and I will speak to you in the next video.